Music is like a soundtrack of our dreams. That's how I always thought of it. You know, music taps into the emotions, and music is also narrative. When I can figure out what a story is, it's almost like I get to put this potion together of these notes and these emotions and this information, and there's a way that that can reach people. I definitely see music as a way to help heal the divisions. Music and other arts have saved us in this pandemic, and I think if this past year has done anything for me, it has convinced me even more that musicians and all other artists are essential to sort of healing the world and creating the world that we want to see. My name is Darrell Grant, and I play piano. So there's a story about me. When I was 2 years old, my parents took me to the concert of this pianist in Pittsburgh, this pianist named Darrell Grant, no relation as far as I know. And they had me sitting at their feet watching the concert, and when they got up at intermission, the couple next to them was like, there was a 2-year-old sitting there through this whole concert, but apparently I had asked them to go to this concert because they had his records at home. And so I don't remember that concert, but I love that story that I was really into music from the earliest stage. I played growing up. I played for my mother who sang, and we actually had a family band. My sister played piano, my brother played guitar, my dad recited poetry. We'd do these family concerts. We had like a religious radio broadcast when I was a kid. So music was always a part of what I did. When I started realizing, like when I heard the music of Stevie Wonder, and it's like, you could do this instead of a job, I was like, I'm all about that. That's what I want to be my job.
Okay, so then there should be, for you, 3 bars of rest?
I'd always kind of had that dream. And so I started playing in jazz bands from 4th grade. In junior high school, we used to tour with our jazz band. So we were like rock stars. I was like 13-year-old wearing shades, you know, just like, so I just had this sense of myself as somebody who could play jazz from early on. Before I moved to Portland from New York, I was asking people, because I was a little worried, and they're like, oh no, Portland is a jazz town, like from the 40s, from the 50s. I was like, really? And then I started sort of asking people about the history, and I found that, you know, there was the whole scene on Williams Avenue, then started to find some of the old cats, some of the older musicians who had been active in the late 50s, early 60s, and started to hear the stories from them. And there were a lot of jazz clubs down there, and there was, you know, live jazz, there was music coming out of the jukebox. I mean, it was a vibrant black neighborhood. And, you know, it was also much like Harlem, the place where people from downtown, from the west side, would come to party or to, you know, relax. And it was also one of the places where the races mixed, which in the 1940s and 50s, everybody didn't think that was a great thing. But I feel like that spirit of jazz was like sort of what inhabited that place. Clubs like the Dude Ranch and the Cotton Club and, you know, Paul's Paradise, and just a great and vibrant feeling place of music. So we're on Williams and Russell, and this Williams Avenue was really the heart of the black neighborhood in Portland historically, and also the heart of the Portland jazz scene. So the block behind us was called the Hill Block, and there was like black businesses and this incredible jazz club in the 1950s called Paul's Paradise. People come up from California, people come down from Seattle, and it was just like the hotbed center of the bebop jazz scene. So I love that I'm standing here in this corner looking at a field, but amazingly, like, you know, 60, 70 years ago, this was like the heart of Portland's jazz scenes. You know, part of what happened was displacement. That black community was decimated first by building the freeway, then second by building the Memorial Coliseum, then third by, you know, this hospital expansion that never happened. And so each one of those things went right through the heart of the black community, right through the heart of Williams Avenue. So that community was displaced and dispersed, and along with it, the culture and the music. In the 1960s, I mean, this whole area of Albina was really declared blighted. That meant that a lot of the buildings were condemned. It means that people couldn't invest in them. And so they cleared out, I don't know, like 170 some houses. A high percentage of those were owned by the black community. In any community, when you sort of break apart, you sort of lose the center, then a lot of the vibrancy goes away. This is the beginning of North Williams Avenue. And this was like the sort of start of this incredibly historic boulevard of such significance in the black community. Right here was a club called McClendon's Rhythm Room, which was started by Bill McClendon, who was a journalist. He started the black newspaper here, a civil rights leader in Oregon for many years, an educator, and incredible pianists and musicians used to play here, and now it's the freeway. Well, I mean, it's really indicative of the change that came about. I mean, progress happens in every city, but I think it's really important to think about the things that you lose. And it's like the community is so much consists of the people that bridge these interests and these, ways of living. So this is the Dude Ranch. And this was like one of the most special jazz clubs in Portland. After World War II, 1945, you could see Billie Holiday here, Louis Armstrong, Nat King Cole. And I just felt like this was like Portland's version of Hollywood or Harlem. This was like the sort of center of the jazz scene for people to come across the bridge, and this was a place where the races mixed and where these cultures met, and clearly an incredible spot for entertainment. And jazz came out of the mixing of cultures, right? But it is impossible, and it never would have happened without the culture of the African diaspora, all those rhythms, those inflections. I mean, to me, like, jazz is not just the music. Jazz is the culture and the history and the values. It is my moral responsibility to pass on that. That's what this music is about. Spirit. A field here where once a house was, and with a tree of cherries and light. Light. To be in this place where you can sort of sense the community around you, it gives a whole different perspective to the neighborhood and a whole different perspective to how the city feels, to have the ghosts of these, of these spirits of the people that lived here, and to know that this tree is still here, still, full of fruit. In a way, it's like the community, it's the same as the community. It's like, it's gnarled, it's not at its best, but it's still giving out this amazing, amazing fruit. And so it's hopeful, It's like, makes me feel hopeful. This looks good. Should I try it? Oh, it's perfect. Perfect. Woo. Connecting with place is a huge part of what excites me about music, because I feel like art has the ability to help us imagine the future that we want. And in order to imagine that future, we have to really understand the past. So really, any kind of art that I do is just an excuse to explore and learn and discover, and then find a way to translate that out into a message that helps people understand themselves and their place better. So I get really, really inspired by all kinds of history, and especially by histories of places like this. As I started to learn the stories about the history of Portland and this sort of divide between the black community that was on the east side and the rest of the city, and how segregated it was, and that whole history, I thought about, all these bridges that we have in the city, and the idea that both people historically would cross the bridge between communities, but also that healing and that information and that culture needed to cross the bridge. I wanted to write a piece that represented sort of my bridge between working, between my jazz roots and my classical roots and hopefully connecting the sort of black scene of the city with the downtown sort of Western European and traditional music scene. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons why I feel so comfortable in Portland, is because I love the bridges. I love this idea of taking you from one place to another, and that we as human beings can sort of find ways to communicate across the things that divide us. And that's very much what this piece speaks to. No, it's just, you know, this piece is really a tribute to those musicians that made the Williams Avenue jazz scene. And I feel like that informed me and formed, you know, this community for me here. I mean, I love playing music, but I've always been more interested in what music can do. And so to me, the possibility of music to build community has always been what was the most exciting to me.